Hold on. We're not.
Via Zoom. We're also being televised via Chelmsford Telemedia on YouTube and recorded for future viewing. This evening we'll be following the published and posted amended agenda, and the first item on that agenda this evening is the approval of minutes from September 22nd of 2022. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, 5-0 approved. Next item on our agenda this evening is a presentation, review, and discussion of the special town meeting warrant for the special town meeting taking place on October 20th at 7:29 p.m. With us this evening, we have our town manager, Paul Cohen, and our finance director, John Souza. I'm going to bring up the presentation for the special town meeting. Just bear with me one second. Okay. And can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Why is it special town meeting and not just town meeting? We have two, one in the spring and one in the fall.
Let me explain, Dave, what transpired here, why there's a special falling within the fall town meeting. The short answer is two issues arose following the close and signing of the posting of the warrant back in September. The select board signs and posts the warrant the Monday after Labor Day, which was around the 10th of September. And on that town meeting was an article pertaining to Charles Way, and it had to do with easements. And the long story short, and I'll go through it a little detail when we go through the article presentation, is town council worked with the council for an abutting property owner to address the issues of frontage, easements, and acceptance of the way, and what ultimately came into an agreement and partially a funding agreement to improve the public way for Charles Way. And it also had to do with the release of lots and frontage and building lots for the adjoining property that had frontage on Charles Way, but didn't have legal frontage because the road wasn't accepted and there were easement issues. So basically, council had to come back and submit a revised warrant article, as well as the agreement, and therefore the article that was on the warrant for the fall town meeting wasn't sufficient. The second matter having to do with the extinguishment of a sewer easement at 255 Princeton Street, town council's opinion was that it did not need town meeting action, and the select board actually acted upon it two meetings ago. What happened was the developer's lender came back and said, we'd be much more comfortable if the extinguishment of the easement was done with town meeting approval. And so basically they said, well, if that's the case and we're going with a special town meeting, and it'll probably be 2 nights of fall town meeting, and we need 14 days of posting, the board signed the warrant at its meeting a week ago Monday to allow the 14-day posting and then have it take place on Thursday. So the short answer to the question is it occurs when issues arise following the posting of the warrant. as you know, there have also been town meetings on other occasions outside of fall and spring town meetings, such as last February when they did the zoning for the UMass West Campus overlay. So that's the long-winded explanation as to why we're dealing with a special. The good news is it shouldn't require an additional night of town meeting. We anticipate that the fall town meeting may not be completed in one evening, and then certainly the second session on Thursday would finish up as well as allow this to take place, and probably not even a full night. So it should not provide any extended requirements in terms of town meeting reps to come out on an additional evening.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay. So with that being said, the first article on the special town meeting pertains to the Charles Way acceptance and of easements. And what you see in the first slide is the acceptance portion of the motion. The second slide is the authorization for the board to acquire the easements. And then the third is basically authorize the select board to do anything else to get this thing resolved. If you see the next slide, it's sort of, I've revised it from what I had. Here's a map, and this is actually an as-built street acceptance map that you can see is actually dated October 5th, and was actually submitted today and stamped. That shows Charles Way. And just to orient people who are watching the program, if you look at the top right, you see North Road. And then Charles Way goes, basically in that westerly direction off of North Road, as you're heading towards Dalton, past Dalton, heading towards the school administration building, but before you get to Parkhurst. So that's the layout of the way, is what you see depicted there, where it says Charles Way. When you see that line that says Old Town Way, that's not a road, that's a paper street. But the actual way of Charles Way is what you see depicted there, to the top of the document. And so the layout of Charles Way. And again, if you go to the next slide, I'll walk you through a little more detail of the history and what brings us to where we are today. It's 7-lot subdivision approved by the planning board on November 7th, 1984. A savings bank account in the amount of $104,000 was pledged in 1985 as a bond to secure the completion of the roadway. What transpired was each lot was conveyed individually, but the owners only acquired an easement to use Charles Way, which meant that the trustees of the real estate trust continued to own the fee in Charles Way and the associated drainage easements. When the Realty Trust failed to complete the work on Charles Way, 4 years later in 1989, the town sought to collect the bond. When they went and did that, you may recall the savings and loan crisis. The town was informed by the FDIC that they had taken over the account, that the funds were no longer available. And that began this, multiple decades long, quest regarding the condition of the roadway. Most recently, in 2020, the abutting property owner, Michael Sheehan, approached the select board noting that he did not have a deeded right to access his property via Charles Way because it had not been accepted as a public way. And obviously he was seeking to get that access because his choice to develop his land was to build his own subdivision roadway or to use frontage off of Charles Way. The road today is deteriorating. I was on it this morning just to familiarize myself with its current condition and to look at the road layout. The Department of Public Works identified the various upgrades to the existing condition of the way to allow it to be acceptable in terms of the standards, subdivision standards as a public way. The DPW's estimate is the improvements would cost at least $150,000 and could cost an additional $75,000 depending upon contractual costs in the new calendar year that haven't been bid yet. And, again, there could be issues that are unforeseen. Michael Sheehan, who is, again, the abutting property owner, has agreed to place $150,000 into an escrow account to be applied to bring Charles Way up to roadway acceptance standards. So that brings us that what will take place is that the town meeting votes to accept Charles Way and authorize the select board to obtain the easements. The DPW will do the work in the spring, which will allow Charles Way to be accepted as in condition to be a public way. And then the only other thing to mention is that there are current residents, as I mentioned, who are on Charles Way, and they are seeking to have the roadway improved and accepted as a public way. The road was last worked on over a dozen years ago when they installed sewer, and it's now deteriorating where it needs some attention. from the sewer work that was put in there. So the bottom line is this is a resolution of a longstanding problem that really was of no one's fault, but for the savings and loan crisis that prevented the town from securing the bond due, which back then in the 89, 90s would have completed the way and brought it for acceptance. So what this does is this sort of sets into motion in a legal process where we have an agreement with the developer, the town moves to accept the way, the town then takes the easements, completes the work, has the funding for the work, may share in some of the cost sharing of that work, but ultimately the road gets accepted as a way, it gets put on the town's Chapter 90 inventory as another small section of roadway that we would receive a little bit of Chapter 90 funding for over time, and it resolves this problem. To, I guess, everybody, hopefully it's a win-win-win scenario where the adjacent property owner benefits, the homeowners on Charles Way benefit, the existing, and the town benefits by having the roadway accepted and sort of having this problem that has been long-standing, resolved. So that's what's being sought here. And I apologize for the numbering. It really is Article 1, and I did correct it after I sent this out. It was 25 on the fall town meeting warrant. So
Of course.
that's what we have.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, Paul, so if I understand the situation correctly, under normal circumstances, we could have expected this street to have been accepted as a public way sometime in the early 90s. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, what
All right.
happens when a subdivision is constructed, whether it's today or even back then, you have to pledge a surety to complete the road. And sometimes they'll hold building lots, or sometimes you'll put in an escrow account, or other times you put a bond and so forth. And unfortunately, the bond that was secured back then, basically went under with the bank that went under, the savings bank that went under in '89.
So we're about 30 years late in doing this. And
Yeah,
again,
and honestly-
that's not a comment, that's not a negative comment. I'm
No,
not trying to assess blame to anybody.
Right. I can say, Sam, and I don't know if you dealt with this when you were on the board, but I've been dealing with this issue for over a dozen years.
Oh, I remember this very well. Yes, I
Okay.
do.
It's been a long-standing issue with
Yep.
different postures of
Hmm.
parties along the way. And I think we finally arrived at a solution that I think everybody can hopefully get behind and put it behind us, because you feel bad because the people who bought the houses on Charles Way may or may not have known what they were getting into, because it's not listed as a private drive. If you go there, it's who knows what the title examination did when they purchased the homes and so forth. And they certainly aren't the original owners. And obviously the abutting property owner is seeking to develop his land, and this provides him with a much less costly alternative than to build another roadway, which would be then another connecting cutting point and entrance to North Road, which again, I'm not sure that that could bring its own challenges. So
Good.
All right. Any other questions? All right, hearing none. Article 2.
Article-
Sewer easement.
yeah, this again, as I mentioned, this is 255 Princeton Street, which is the former UMass Lowell West campus. And it always goes around money. When the developer is going out getting its financing and bond authorization and everything to construct this 400-unit project, their lending council came across in their title examination an easement that was recorded back in 1914. And we actually have the handwritten entry in the Registry of Deeds, because back then they weren't using typewriters. It was cursive writing. But the bottom line is there was an order of taking for a public sewer on May 5th, 1914, which was then the Middlesex County Training School. And this actually involved the then county commissioners. There was actually a roadway that went into the training school. I think it was Grosvenor Street or what have you. The bottom line is today there's no existing sewer system within that historical 40-foot wide easement. And basically, because that easement is there, they're just looking for the town to extinguish the sewer easement. And obviously it has no impact on the town. It just sort of clears the title and resolves any issues, regarding that portion of the property. So bottom line is it's really a ministerial act, but it does require town meeting action, or it's being requested to require town meeting action as sort of as what town council describes a belt and suspenders approach to clear up this resolution of a sewer easement for a sewer line that doesn't exist. And we're aware they're not connecting to the town sewer out there. They're putting on their own package treatment plant. So there's really no issue or concern here in terms of, impact on the town sewer system.
Okay.
Well, it's a good thing this is happening now, because if it were 50 years from now, nobody would be able to read the cursive writing.
Well, yeah. Any questions? All right. Hearing none, thank you for the presentation. Next on the agenda is public comment, but I will say there is no public in the Zoom room, so I'll go straight into a vote of recommendations for special town meeting warrant articles. Our reader is not here this evening, so who would like to take on that role?
I'll do it if you would like, Mr. Chairman.
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, Article 1. I move that the Finance Committee recommend to approve the adoption of Article 1. And would you like me to read it into the record?
As presented, it's fine by me.
That's fine, thank you. As presented.
I second it.
Discussion. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. If I hear no further discussion, I'll take a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, 5 in favor, 2 absent. All right, Article 2.
Article 2, I move that the Finance Committee vote to recommend approval on Article 2 as submitted.
I second it.
Discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? None, 5 in favor, 2 absent. All right. Well, that makes short work of the special town meeting. Let's go next on our agenda. We have a discussion of reconsideration of fall town meeting warrant articles. And this pertains to Article 14, Article 15, the transfers of free cash for the property tax levy and the general stabilization fund. So in order to reconsider, I'll entertain a motion to reconsider those 2 votes.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, let's discuss. Let me bring up the new numbers. Just bear with me 1 second.
Yeah. While Jim's doing that, I obviously incorporated the actual certified free cash number, which was a slightly below what the town accountant projected because of a DOR entry in terms of June charter school assessments to the town, and then I incorporated the action of the appropriation of free cash at last Monday's special town meeting. So that's how we arrive at the $3,082,514 number. I reduced the stabilization fund number by the reduction in the certified amount on 15, and then 14, I reduced the reduction of the property tax levy transfer of free cash by the amount of the vote that was taken last Monday at special town meeting, so that the total would amount to $500,000.
Okay, thank you. Article 14, do I have a motion?
I'll move that the Finance Committee vote to recommend Article 14 as presented.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
Discussion. So this, just for clarification, Paul, it drops it down from what we had initially presented and voted on was $1 million. Then there was discussion by the select board about reducing it to $500,000, and then the $300,000 and change was amended on the special town meeting on October 3rd, So now we're down to this 164,513 number. Just for edification purposes, what does that equate to on an average tax bill?
If you add the 164 plus the amount that was voted this past Monday, it adds up to $500,000. That would be $35 on the average single-family property tax bill total. So we'll basically be below levy limit by $500,000.
Okay, because it was taken from that free cash and,
Right.
and does not, it wasn't raised and appropriated. So as you mentioned at the special town meeting, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, so to speak.
Right.
There's still that additional amount's not being taken from by a raise and appropriate. It's affecting the levy the same way it would have.
Right, and it may actually, just so you know, the excess levy capacity will actually be different than 500 exactly, because we haven't had the new growth certified by the Department of Revenue, and also the overlay hasn't been approved by the Department of Revenue system. So generally what we've seen is it generally tends to be more than, this is a conservative number, but roughly we're at least $500,000.
Okay, thank you. We're in discussion?
Why take it, reduce the property tax portion and as opposed to taking it from the general stabilization fund? Going back to the original,
So-
what we voted on before.
So the way I understand it, I think we just touched upon it briefly, is because the 300 and change, and I'll pull up the exact number that was voted on the amendment to the special town meeting on Monday, this past Monday, October 3rd, that would have been a raise and appropriate. So it would have been a take against the tax levy. And so because that funding was taken from there, if you take it away from the reduced property tax levy, the $500,000, which is the new number that was chosen by the select board at their previous select board meeting that prior Monday, then the effect, although as Paul mentioned, it may be adjusted by the adopted overlay and things of that nature, is effectively the same as if that $500,000 had been applied to reduce the tax levy.
Thanks.
If it was taken from the general stabilization fund, then you have another situation where you're actually applying more towards the property tax levy for reduction than the select board desired to in their adjustment down to $500,000. So say, for instance, you take the $336,000 that was applied on Monday and took it out of the stabilization fund and kept the property tax levy at $500,000. Then you'd actually be putting $336,000 more against the property tax levy for a total of $800 and, I'm doing math on the fly here, but $836,000, which would be halfway or a little more than halfway between what the original amount of $1 million was and what the desired amount by the select board was.
Thank you.
This is why on Monday when asked, I said there'll be some number adjusting.
Yeah, it's just 164,000 property. It just seems to me like that's not going to have any meaningful effect on anybody's tax bill. So is there some other place we could spend that money that might be better?
What it does, Dave, is it keeps the number at 500,000 or the $35 per tax bill. If we keep the 164 there, if we take that away and put it all into general stabilization fund, then it'll reduce the amount further from 35 down to maybe $28 per tax bill or something like that. So that's essentially what the outcome would be.
Right. Plus, at our last meeting, we already we agreed with the 500,000,
No.
right?
Well, now the vote was split on whether or not to do $1 million or
Okay, all
apply
right,
it
you're right.
to
Correct,
the general stabilization fund.
correct.
Right, we were at $1 million.
That's right. I'm sorry, I didn't remember that. Thank you.
And then the select board brought it to 500,000.
That's right. That's right.
Now it's down to 164. And, I'm just, the only reason I guess, bringing it up as much as I am is, I had a discussion with a taxpayer in my family who just said, doesn't seem like there wouldn't be some better use of the money that, because there's going to be literally no impact on someone's tax bill.
Well, with this number, again, there'll be a $35 impact on the average taxpayer's bill as opposed to the 70 with the full million.
Yeah, and divided by 4 quarters, you know.
You know, it's an adjustment from the 70. If you remember last fall annual town meeting, there's amendment by one of our members to bring the 2 million down to 1 million. That's the number that was set last fall annual town meeting. This is an additional reduction of 500, which I'm okay with. My vote when we voted on this originally at the $1 million was to continue because the bell had been rung, because there was a reduction, and because our argument that prior to these reductions had been always that you're going to have if the money's not available, you're going to have an artificial inflation on 1 year if the funds aren't available to reduce the tax levy, and that has been our consistent position as a finance committee for many years. The bell was rung. The barn door was opened when a few years ago, and we understood why, because of the pandemic and for requested tax relief. There was money applied from free cash to reduce the property tax levy. My vote, at least from then, has been to apply some amount towards that in order to reduce the impact additionally, because again, property taxes continue to go up as property values raise and the Prop 2.5 is presented. But you're right. It's a smaller hit. It's still a reduction, but it's not as big a reduction as it would have been with $1 million. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays or abstentions?
I oppose.
Okay, 4 in favor, 1 against, 2 absent. And then we'll go to Article 15, applying the balance to the General Stabilization Fund. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to have the balance go into the General Stabilization Fund, that we vote to recommend approval of that action.
I second it.
Discussion? I think we tailor it as a balanced remaining vote. Similarly we did previously, and then I think we all agree that that's the ultimate source that should receive the funds. We got a lot of projects coming, and a lot of uncertainty and a lot of inflation. So anything we can contribute toward the stabilization fund would be appreciated. And thank you, John. We did receive the those additional stabilization fund updates regarding where they are currently, what the 5-year forecasts are, and that's been shared with the committee and sent along to Pam to be included in the warrant book.
Oh, great. Thank you.
All right. Next on our agenda is a
call for a vote. Did you
I
call for
haven't
a vote?
voted on it yet.
we haven't voted yet. I apologize. Thank you. Call for a vote. Well, we did call. Yes, call for a vote.
Did not.
No, not on the stabilization.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Was that a nay or abstention, Anita, or was that a?
No.
Okay, just a delayed hand.
I'm a yay.
All right.
Sorry.
5 in favor, 2 absent. All right. Now we can go to a discussion of future meetings and timeline for Finance Committee warrant book. Letters out, take a look. Now we have these votes. I can make those final adjustments to the letter. Pam, as soon as we have the final version, I think we can send it over to town to publish and then off to the publisher to get that book put together. Anyone has additional items they want to add to any of their particular articles, please let me know as soon as possible. I'd like to have a final version tomorrow morning.
Nice.
As you know, Monday's a holiday. There's a next week at 7:30 at the North Town Hall. 7:30, Paul?
I'm sorry. The 7:30 is the
Your pre-town meeting.
Wednesday evening at 7:30 at the North Town Hall.
Yes. So we would encourage anyone that wants to attend, especially town meeting representatives, to attend that meeting to get a chance to discuss and review the warrant articles that are going to be presented both for this town meeting and also special town meeting. It's a great opportunity to get those questions reviewed ahead of time and prior to town meeting. I'll have public comment. There is no one in the Zoom room. There is no press in the Zoom room. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I just have a question.
Oh, certainly, Pam.
Yeah, what happened to Article 26? Because I don't have any vote on that.
So that is still, if my understanding, is still being discussed by the select board. We don't have a final position that they're reviewing on that particular article. It's still in flux, and so we're taking no action on that article.
Okay. No action. And then just to let you know, the printer let me know that they are closed on Monday. So
Of course.
if you want the book for Wednesday, we need to get it to them tomorrow morning.
Okay.
So just letting you know.
All right. Well, I'll put the right after we get off of this, I'll put those final 4 votes in. All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you, you too.